now there's no more you to shoot. God come save the misbegotten, lost ghetto souls of black cotton. In God's eyes, Mama told me there'd be days like this, but I'm this. Rock black cotton in God's eyes.
A lot of people going home.
We are.
I just want to talk to you about specifically right now about Prince and also Afeni Shakur,
yes,
the mother of Tupac Shakur.
Yes.
What do you think about their deaths? Because both of these people seem like they were cremated real soon after they died, and a lot of people got questions about the way they died. And do you think that they were killed or murdered for their intellectual property?
With the Afeni Shakur situation, I'm not intimately familiar with the details of her passing. But what does raise suspicion for me about her untimely death was that the word was circulating that a full feature-length movie on the life of her son, Tupac Shakur, was in the making. And for her to die during the early stages of making that film is a great loss to us as a people, because she's probably the only living, she would have been the only living human being who could give us an accurate portrayal of who Tupac really was, what he meant, and what he was really trying to do. With her being gone, Tupac's legacy is largely going to be left up to speculation. Those who knew him, some may have even been close to him, but no one can really protect your legacy like your mother. And so for me, the loss of Afeni Shakur really means the loss of the true legacy of Tupac Shakur. As far as Prince goes, I'm pretty certain that Prince was murdered. I think he was murdered by Warner Brothers, just like I think Sony murdered Michael Jackson. Prince and Warner Brothers had come to an agreement 2 years ago that they was going to give him his masters back, which really didn't make any sense after all this long fight he's had with them for decades. But the stipulation, in order for Prince to get his masters, he had to give them the permission to reauthorize, to re-engineer the Purple Rain 30-year anniversary album. So they brought him back to the table just so they could get back involved into his music business. And I really believe that Prince did not like what was happening. He was going to separate again, and they knew that they had to kill him before he separated to guarantee them a stake in the interest of his estate. I'm willing to bet, just like with Michael Jackson, we heard a few months ago that Sony Records bought back the Beatles catalog from Michael's family. That's why he was murdered, for the Beatles catalog. His family sold it, not knowing what to do with it. I forecast the same thing that happened with Prince's estate. I'm willing to bet that Warner Brothers is going to end up owning all of Prince's music again. And I'm also willing to bet that the family is likely to sell to Warner Brothers all the unpublished music that Prince had. In fact, Prince's unpublished music is probably worth more than the published catalog, because he had more unreleased material than he had released. And I really believe what they wanted was that unreleased material. Can you imagine how much money is going to be made off of unreleased Prince albums? And it's even been stated that Prince had enough material where he could release an album every year, I believe, for the next 100 years.
Wow.
That's why he was murdered. And for him to be cremated as quickly as he was, what multi-millionaire gets cremated within 72 hours of an autopsy? That doesn't even make any sense. That's because you need to bury the evidence that shows that this man did not die from an illness, claiming he had the flu. Who dies of the flu with the type of money he has that can purchase any quality of medical care available in the world? Not only that, he was seen riding his bike in a local park in Minnesota. What black person rides a bike in the cold with a flu? It makes no sense. He was murdered by the music industry, as was Michael Jackson, as was Sam Cooke. Okay, they murdered Sam Cooke because he owned his own music. Okay, Prince was teaching other artists how to own their own music. You see, they murdered Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix's manager was an undercover British MI6 agent. And when Jimi Hendrix decided that he wanted to finance the Black Panther Party and other radical groups, his manager stepped in and forbade it. And then when Jimmy found out he was being robbed by his manager, he decided to separate. And the next thing you know, they find him in the bathtub from an overdose, Whitney Houston style. And I believe Whitney was murdered because Whitney was about to investigate whether or not she had been robbed from Clive Davis. Because for all the millions of albums that she sold and the billions of dollars she raised, going broke didn't make sense for Whitney Houston, who was the top female singing star of all time. Now, Mariah has sold more albums, but that's only because Whitney stopped publishing once she ran into a drug problem. So she was going to see where the rest of her money was. And I think she's probably going to investigate owning some of her catalog. And so she had to go.
So the problem is, like you talk about these different examples throughout history, Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, even Prince and Michael Jackson, is that are we winning the battle but yet losing the war? Like we win some battles.
I don't think we're winning the battle or winning the war.
Okay.
And when it comes to music, you got to recognize that music is another white racist institution. And I think the murder of Prince was deliberate, intentional, and was designed to send a message to all the black artists in the music industry that if you ever try to separate from us, we will kill you first. It's like the mafia. You cannot get out. Now, if you're a low-level artist, you'll get out because you're not worth much. But if you're somebody on that level, they're not letting you out. There's no way we're going to let you make money off of your album without giving us our cut. The message is clear.
And you know what's interesting, when you speak of Sam Cooke, I know his manager, Alan Klein, I believe his name was, he also managed the Beatles. He stole from them as well.
Wow.
And so like, it's funny how these patterns come up and you know, all over the place.
See, Sam was also a good friend of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. And rumor has it that he had told Dr. King and Malcolm X that once they came together and stopped fighting, he was going to finance the new civil rights movement. He was dead within weeks. Remember, they killed Sam Cooke 3 weeks before they killed Malcolm X. He was killed right before Malcolm. So they was getting rid of anyone who could even potentially be part of an independent black progressive movement.
But how you look at, well, you go 20 years now with Tupac. You believe Tupac was murdered by the government?
Tupac was murdered. There's no question Tupac was murdered. In fact, we know for a fact that the CIA, the FBI had Tupac and Big under surveillance for at least 2 weeks before their death. So if someone's trying to kill me and you're watching me, it's no way you can't know who's trying to kill me. And if no one is ever arrested or prosecuted, it's because you were the killer. You see, Tupac was working with the gangs in LA, the Crips and the Bloods. He was politicizing them, and he was going to put his money behind them. But Tupac was murdered by the music industry. How can you have the #1 selling rapper in the world also being politically inclined? Imagine if Jay-Z was also interested in the black struggle. Tupac was probably the most significant threat they may have had since Malcolm X, because he had the following, he had the popularity, he had the publicity, but most of all, he had the money to make a reality his dreams and visions.